I went from 3,000 to 12,000 followers on LinkedIn in under 3 months with just 15 minutes of writing per day. The trick to growing by 4x was consistency and quality, but how did I do this alone with no marketing team? Well, here's how I did it. Using Relevance AI, I built a team of 6 AI agents that help me create valuable content across every platform. Today, I'm showing you exactly how to build this system, and if you stick around to the end, how you can clone the entire system with all 6 AI agents that'll be working completely out of the box, absolutely free. If you've ever had great content ideas die in the I should post this graveyard, you're not alone. With a full-time job and limited hours, I really needed a solution that could take my ideas and transform them into high-quality content across a lot of different platforms without eating up my day. So what I'm about to show you isn't theory, it's the exact system that I use to 4x my following in just 90 days, and it'll work across any platform. By the end of this tutorial, you'll know how to build your own AI content team that can transform half-baked ideas into viral-ready content, automatically format for LinkedIn, Twitter, newsletters, and video platforms, generate custom images without design skills, and create an organized content archive that you can reference anytime. And again, I'll be showing you how to clone this and piece it all together in your own workspace, so stick around for that. Okay, so let's say you've come up with an idea that you want to write a post about. Maybe you want to write a lot of posts about it on LinkedIn, X, newsletter, maybe even make some YouTube shorts, some Instagram reels, or TikToks about it. All you've really got to do with this system is write down a prompt, and over here you can see I made it super basic, which is write a post about the ROI of AI agents for marketing teams in 2025. So quite simple, the return on investment of AI agents. And as you can see, one of these agents here, Socrates, actually asked me a lot of questions as to what this content actually is meant to entail. As you see, it asked me a few follow-up questions. And the role of Socrates is to really flesh out your idea and ask you why you're writing this thing and how we can make it even better. And so as you can see, I've given it very limited information afterwards, which is not very helpful, but I just wanted to show you what this system looks like with very little resources. It can still draft something up that is actually quite high quality. So then Socrates passes this over to Cicero, and Cicero's whole goal is to actually create viral ready content. So what that means is that Socrates will prepare a draft based on all the questions it has asked me, my original idea, and what it thinks I should be writing about. Cicero will then go and search the web and also reason with what viral ready content means to make sure that this content has all the different characteristics of a viral post. And so as you can see, it's brought in this post from Socrates and it's actually started to search the web. And this is true agentic AI because I haven't really told it exactly what it's meant to be searching, but it is looking at the text that it has received and it's thinking about what sort of ideas it actually needs to flesh out the idea with some research if required, and then make it even better quality content. So as you can see here, it's performed some Google searches. It's actually got some content from websites as well. And you see it's done that quite a number of times. And so now when it's done, it actually repurposes it over to Ovid. And so we're starting to see this org chart over here, right? We've got Socrates and then Cicero over here transforms the content. And then we've got these 3 agents down here. These are going to be repurposing agents. At this stage, what we're going to be doing is repurposing it to written text formats like LinkedIn, X, and newsletter, creating an actual image prompt that then actually generates the image for us and gives us a link to download that image using ChatGPT's latest 4.0 image gen. And then we have this other one that actually helps us to script out some videos if we really want to make videos from this content. So we're talking Instagram Reels, TikToks, YouTube Shorts, and even a long form YouTube script. Lastly, I've actually included an agent over here that takes all the outputs and saves them permanently into a range of different Google Docs so that we have all of this stuff stored somewhere. So if we go back to the run over here, you can see that Ovid has now asked the other agents to repurpose the article, The ROI Revolution, How AI Agents Are Transforming Social Media Marketing in 2025, into these formats. And so it actually goes to this agent over here, and that is Ovid, repurposed to LinkedIn. So we see that we've got an input, which is that content draft, and through Ovid's process, we've got an output. AI just boosted social media ROI by 40% for my client last quarter. The old playbook is officially dead. So you're seeing that it's actually writing content that tends to kind of resonate on LinkedIn. And this is all trained in a language model that I'll show you soon. And you can see it's done the same thing with X. So we've got an input over here and an output. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got a whole tweet or X post over here. And then we've also got it repurposed to a newsletter. And then over here, Xenophon, our agent, has actually gone and stored this into Google Docs by creating a new Google Doc for each format. Then this happens again and again. So Ptolemy over here creates an image prompt for a visually striking image. This is actually the prompt for the content that we've written. So futuristic AI agents analyzing glowing data streams and holographic social media icons. You can see here that it's actually pulled all the stops, right? It's got the aspect ratio, it's got a lot of the different lighting information and things like that as well. The good thing is that you can actually edit how this prompt is created as well if you have certain preferences. But right now we're optimizing for creating this super futuristic imagery. As you can see, we've got an image URL over here. If I click on that, we've got this very AI generated looking content, but as you can see, it's pretty high quality and it's got all those different elements of, ROI with the graph and all these different things around social media, likes, profiles, etc. So again, Xenophon banks that. And then the last thing is Plutarch, who writes all the long form scripts. So as you can see, each of these tools composes a script, input, output, etc. After that, Xenophon banks them. And then the task is pretty much complete. So let's take a look at how this actually works. If I go into the build over here, as you can see, we've got this set up in Relevance AI through a workforce. And so what that means is we've got a lot of different agents, each of which have their own prompts and their different tools, and they all connect with each other. So each of these can actually work standalone, and their tools can work standalone as well. But what's great about this is that I can put through a prompt, and it actually triggers a flow of different agents. And I can even add different logic on how they're used and how they connect to each other. But right now I've kept it super simple. And so let's look at the prompts. Very conveniently, I can actually look at the prompts over here. So if I click on Socrates, we'll see that his goal is question, clarify, and flesh out ideas. So very simple objective. And if you want a tip on how I made all of these different prompts, I actually had a pretty big chat with ChatGPT 03 to really get an idea of what the different objectives for each agent are. That helped me to map out this entire agent architecture and also gave me an idea of what each individual prompt should be and how to think about the different tasks. But I really also just ideated and thought about, okay, I would want to flesh out a raw idea first, just to see if there's any gaps that need to be filled out. And then I want to make it a viral masterpiece, right? And so that's really just looking at research online. What makes a good viral piece of content? And really just getting all those ideas. So as you can see with Cicero here, we've got a lot more information, composition guidelines. So integrating all these different elements of viral content, social currency, identity, and moral emotion, timely triggers, practical value, etc. So it's weighing up the content against all of this. And then at the bottom, or rather at the top, we have these three tools at our disposal: Google searches, content from websites, and reading PDFs. So Cicero has these tools at his disposal and can decide if any data or any research would actually significantly enhance the trust or novelty of the post. These tools are super simple to add in. They actually already existed. So I can just add tool over here. And if you look at this library of tools, there's a lot of the most common ones. As you can see, Perform Google Search is one of those. There's a bunch of different Google search tools. You can even expand this and have LinkedIn research as a part of it. And basically any tool is a possibility here. And so what I did was I just searched and I added these tools in. And so that's what we've got over here. So in summary, we've got an objective. It's expecting an input. So it will receive a draft text from Socrates. I've just named Socrates to make sure that there is no error over here. And then we've got a task and tools and some composition guidelines. What comes next is these three repurposing agents. So over here, repurposes text to LinkedIn, X, and newsletter. So you will receive a content brief from Cicero. And so the tasks are repurpose the content given to you by running these exact steps. So number one, repurpose to LinkedIn, then repurpose to X, then newsletter. So why are these three different tools? I'll show you why. If we go into one of these, like repurpose to newsletter, you'll see that there's actually a different type of prompt built into this. So this tool quite literally is just an input of a content draft, and then a language model step. So if you haven't used tools in Relevance AI before, all these are very deterministic workflows, kind of like what you've got in Zapier and Make, where you have inputs and you have different steps that happen along the way. So quite simply, I would just add a LLM step over here, and I would choose my language model. And I've got this variable over here, content draft. So what the agent will very cleverly do without us having to do manually is put in the draft content over here. And all we need to do is make sure that this language model step has content draft as a tag mentioned. How I would do that is to just type in variables and then select the content draft over here, which we've already done. And then I've got this prompt. So you are a newsletter craftsman, rewrite the above content into a newsletter article or blog post, optimizing for certain things. And then I've got all these guidelines. All of this was retrieved via research. Again, me chatting to O3 with a bunch of different research that it was doing. Again, chatting to O3 as well and getting an idea of what makes for a good newsletter, for example. If you want to change this, more than welcome to change it and repurpose it to what newsletter format suits you. And so what will happen then is that it repurposes it and we have a newsletter. If we look at some of the other tools, for example, repurpose to LinkedIn, it's a very similar idea. So all we're really using here is a bunch of language models wrapped in more language models and more tools, etc. So over here, we've got the same thing. I've got this content draft, and the draft really comes in and then it goes through to the language model step, and we've got some guidelines over here. You can even add examples and different things to this prompt to make it even more specific and more attuned to your language as well. And you also have the customizability of a model. So I can actually go into OpenAI and choose one of those, be aware of the credit costs and also the different use cases of each one. And I've also got Anthropic. And so for copywriting, I recommend something like Claude 3.7 Sonnet, just because it really emulates tone of voice the best, in my opinion. So going back to this over here, the next one that we've got to look at is Ptolemy. So Ptolemy crafts an image prompt and generates art. So you are Ptolemy, a celestial image prompt designer. You'll receive a content brief from Cicero and then utilize the content brief given to you by performing these steps. So we've got this image prompt creator and actual image gen tool. I actually created both of these, but they're actually quite simple. So I'll walk you through them. The first one is the image prompt. So again, what we're actually doing is repurposing that content brief that we've got from Cicero, just like we've done with those other tools. So that comes in here, and then we've got this language model step. That's still quite familiar, right? Nothing's really changed here in terms of process. So we've got these guidelines and then an output. What's actually different is that I'm not creating content. I'm creating a prompt that is optimized for DALL-E 3 or GPT-4o image gen, probably the same thing. And it has aspect ratio tags, bunch of different things around lighting, brand colors, etc. So you can really refine this, and you can actually probably put in a lot of your own brand guidelines. I've just made this super generic. And so what will happen then is it gets fed into, as we see over here, it'll use that prompt to actually generate an image using GPT-4o image generation, which is right now one of the best image generation models that I've seen. And so what it does is it takes that prompt that we created, and it actually uses a tool here in Relevance AI, again, that is text to image generation, but now leveraging the newest model of OpenAI GPT image 1. And so all we're doing is, again, feeding that variable through. So that prompt that we wrote or that was generated will come through here, and then it'll be fed into the text to image generation and then create an image for us. And then it'll pass them over to Xenophon to save. I've also configured an output over here that has said that it'll output a URL for us to actually view the image. So that's just making it a lot easier for us to interface. Last agent over here is actually quite similar to the one that generated LinkedIn newsletter and X posts, Plutarch Academy Award winning content mastermind. So inputs, again, receives it from Cicero and then repurpose the content given to you by running these exact steps. So I won't look into all of these different tools. They're all going to be clonable in the link in the description after this video. But essentially, they're very similar. They're different language model prompts that I have optimized for YouTube scripts, YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, and TikToks. Again, feel free to change these, but I think I did a fairly decent job in terms of just capturing the general gist of what makes a decent piece of content there. And then the output over here is 4 separate outputs, the long form script, shorts, reels, etc. And then it goes over to Xenophon. So One thing that we've got to configure here is that we need to connect our Google Docs, which is pretty simple. I've got this create a Google Doc tool. So let's just have a look at what that uses. Essentially, all you need to do is connect to your Google account, and then the agent decides what the title and the content of the doc is going to be. And then it uses this create Google Doc tool. And pretty simple. Action, create, and then it gives it a title, adds the contents in. And if I look at my Google Docs over here, I've actually got quite a lot of these saved in already. So it's got the title, all the text, etc. You can play around with the formatting of how exactly this looks to you. And so how I configured Xenophon was to actually just get the current time, to just make sure we've got the current time properly in there, so that it can add a date as well. And so we've got some notes here on give each document a standardized title with this exact format, subject, medium, and then the date. And so I'm just making sure that everything's accurate. And you can actually change the formatting here as well. With Google Docs, I believe it prefers rich text formatting, but you can really change this to whatever it is that you want. You can even change it to Markdown. You can also configure Xenophon to not just create a Google Doc, but also use other tools like Notion or saving it to other things like Google Sheets, for example, or Airtable. This is just one example of what I did, but very similarly, all you would do is put in a new task and then add in Airtable or Notion, etc. And so before I show you how to actually clone this, one good thing to know is that you can trigger this via a few different methods, right? Again, we've got all these agents that we can just drag in, and tools and triggers and conditions. So you can start to change a lot of the connectors. But the first thing you can do is actually add in a trigger. Let's say you want to talk to this via email, or a content brief comes out. I can actually connect my Gmail account. I can actually connect my Gmail account over here and then link it over here, so that whenever I get an email of a certain subject line, for example, it'll actually trigger this process. What's also good to know is that in these prompts over here, I've very explicitly named all of the different agents. And so that is a way for them to be able to communicate with each other in a very predictable and consistent manner. So Socrates will always kind of pass things over to Cicero once finished. And then Cicero has the names of the other agents over here. And as you can see, I've also just made sure that they've also been named over here, like Cicero is named in Ovid's prompt, and Xenophon is named at the end. And so you can actually achieve a very similar thing over here if you want to make this a sort of atomic workforce where you have all these agents that work alone, but you also want them to work within this workforce. So what you can do is you can actually put in the instructions for how to use them here as well. So I could just take those names and put them in here instead. The next step, handoff, is really good for very predictable steps and very predictable flows, but I prefer to use the decide when to use over here. I prefer to configure this as decide when to use because over here I've actually given it quite a lot of context around what it's going to be doing next with all the different agents. And I just want it to be sort of reasoning a bit more agentic rather than having to force an actual outcome. So how do we actually clone all of this now? The good news is that recently Relevance AI has come out with clonable workforces. So what that means is that I no longer have to clone each individual agent and then connect them up into a workforce. And as you can see, there's a share link over here, and then simply just copy that in, for example, and then clone it into any project of my choice. And then I'll actually have access to the workforce. You do need a paid account of some kind to be able to clone a workforce. So that is Pro or above. And so if you're on a free plan, I still have a solution for you. And that is that you can clone all of these different agents individually and then add them as agents and sub-agents in the usual way that you would on Relevance AI before Workforce Builder. But now you've got this clonable workforce, and that should make things significantly easier. And needless to say, if you have enjoyed this video and you have enjoyed the content that I've created here today and the clonable workforce that I'm providing, feel free to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel for more AI productivity agents and workforces. I'm also pretty keen to hear some ideas of different agents that you'd like me to build in the future. So if there's any that particularly stand out, feel free to drop them in the comment section below, and I might actually get to building them and making a video on them. But thanks so much for joining, and catch you in the next one.